My name is Craig Gaines. I work for the Toro company as a product manager with drip irrigation. So we'll talk about drip irrigation today. Prior to this, I worked for 10 years as a strawberry breeder. So my background was more in plant biology, and I kind of got into agriculture in the reverse way. As I was doing experiments, and then I was farming, and pretty soon I was running a farm and doing all these other things. So I didn't have the luxury of like to have this type of education. Like a lot of this stuff I'm teaching today, I was putting this together, and I was thinking, oh man, like I was trying to find the right level to come at it with, and I didn't want it to be too mathematical or too basic. But really, if I would have known what I'm presenting here today at the beginning when I worked in ag, it would have saved me a ton of grief, blowing out lines and doing a bunch of different stuff. So this is like conceptual drip irrigation. I don't know. So just getting started. So what does anybody here want to share? Why agriculture? Why you guys want to? What's the deal with agriculture?
Another source of income.
Another source of income. Yeah, that's
something. Just being able to grow a product, be able to kind of just growing something from start, and I'm just watching it growing and being the one that kind of helps develop it and everything like that.
It seems real, right?
That's kind of what drives me to go into agriculture and make stuff instead of some other routes that will get more.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same with me. I mean, it just seems like you're doing a real thing. You're out there. You're growing. Well, like when I was explaining to my kids, I have 3 little kids. What do? I do strawberries. It was really easy for them to understand. I would come home, what's your dad do? He does strawberries. It was something real and tangible, and you're out there with nature. This, Archi's, I think, is beautiful out here, man. I had an opportunity at one point in my strawberry breeding career when I was training. It was this farm, and they had all these different crops, and it was magical to kind of go out, get to pick all these fruit, and kind of see everything grow and learn. I kind of see that in this place. So you guys are in a, I think, fun position right now. But it's cool. Archi's Institute of Sustainable Agriculture. That's a big goal of the Toro company. Sustainability. We're focused on that. So we're super excited to be partnering with Archi's. And also, just by chance, this is offered through the University of Minnesota. Toro company. This is an American company headquartered in Minnesota. So that's a cool thing, and just a coincidence, a cool coincidence. So yeah, like I said, I've been in agriculture about 15 years. Before strawberries, it was biofuels. Before biofuels, it was corn. Looking at the genes that control flowering in corn. And before that, I was just taking classes. We were kind of going out and roaming and looking at all the wild plants in San Diego and thinking about how cool they were. I was doing that earlier. It's a lot of fun. But this is where we're going to go older. Kind of got older version right here. But look, this is the 2009 version, and this is the 2025 version. Irrigation works because right here you got a desert, and down here everything's green. So with irrigation, we were able to make it green. Over the years, this is a success story. We got. So we're going to take through all the steps right now. So from the water source, this is important when you're selecting a farm. You need to know how much water you have, what the quality of your water is. You get that water out, like you guys were saying today, you're looking at irrigation lines. What'd you find? A lot of them clogged, a lot of gunk. You need filtration. Filtration is a big thing. These are sand media filters. You're going to have those close to the pump. You got some of these like disc and screen filters. Those are good down the line. Through there, there's valves and automation. We're going to skip over that today because that's a whole, class in itself. We'll just pretend like the valves they are here, just simple ball valves or gate valves, something you open up, something you close, like the switch. And then mostly focus on, of course, the submains and the drip line. And this whole presentation is going to lead into that. And you'll lead right into the lab at the last page. You kind of offer the checklist of everything you need to do to set up a drip irrigation system. And you'll find that you learn most of it in this talk right here. And what you didn't learn, we'll learn together out there in the lab. So, all right, drip irrigation. Why drip irrigation? So I'm already selling it. This is what they gave me, but I believe in drip irrigation. Like I said, I came from strawberries. In strawberries, you have to do drip. There's no watering strawberries with sprinkler. It's only drip, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. Um, Drip irrigation, it's just the definition. What it is, you're delivering the water right to the root zone, and so that is efficient for a lot of different reasons. And when I think about drip irrigation, this being an institute for sustainable agriculture, it's sustainable because you're using exactly what you need, but it's also profitable. It's the confluence of the two. And as a grower, as future growers, that's where you need to be. Now, the margins in agriculture are often thin, and so you can't be wasting money by throwing water here, throwing water there, because if you waste water or your irrigation system is inefficient, you're wasting more than water. You're wasting energy. You're wasting inputs, and you're giving yourself more work. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but so the first thing, the benefit, improved water efficiency. It makes sense. You're delivering it right to the root zone, minimizing your costs in kind of a lot of different ways. First, in pumping energy, if you have a variable speed pump with drip irrigation systems, you can use them at lower PSI. A lot of drip tape is 8, 10 PSI. And then drip line, which is what we'll be using today, that's fun. We try and use it between 30 and 40. And then you have sprinklers that need 60, or you go up to misters that need 80 or 90. So that's energy it takes to run those things. But you also minimizing costs because if you're given fertility through the lines, if you're running pesticides through the lines, anything, that is going directly to the plants and not to other places. So reduced weed growth, it makes a lot of sense. If you put water where it's not supposed to grow, something's going to grow. When you have sunlight, dirt, and water, something's growing there. And there's tons of these awesome plants that are well adapted to growing anywhere that are going to grow if you're watering your furrows. So you'll find in one of the huge limiting factors in agriculture is the cost of labor. In strawberries, it's about 70% of what you're paying is out to labor. So the less you have to pay to people to go through and weed your property, the more return you're going to get on the investment. And that's going to be facilitated by drip irrigation. So improve crop yields and quality. Yeah, it increases the return on investment. But this is something, we don't talk about a lot. And I didn't think about it before I was kind of exposed to it. Because sometimes in the type of strawberry growing that I was doing, which was breeding, we were looking for new varieties. When the plants are young, you have to sprinkle, irrigate them. And then later on, you put them on drip when they get bigger. But the problem with sprinkling strawberries is you get the leaves wet. When leaves are wet, it introduces, you can have fungal infection is a big thing. So what we would deal with, powdery mildew is a big one with strawberries, botrytis. You can get bacterial infection like angular leaf spot. And all of that was exacerbated by water being on the leaves. In addition, water on strawberries ruins the fruit. I don't know if anybody here, buy strawberries from the store or whatever. You don't wash them right when you get them home. If you wash them and you put them in your fridge, they're just going to be ruined because the skin can't take that. It gets wet, it messes up the, osmotic balance or something. It does something to the skin, so they get ruined. So like when strawberry growers, a lot of times before the field's producing, they want that rain. They want that. As soon as it starts producing, they don't want rain because they have to pick it no matter what. But if it has rained, usually they're just picking it and they're throwing it away. So anyway, it protects your fruit too. And that's to varying degrees for other crops. Every crop is going to have that to some degree or another. The berries have it more because they're soft fruits. Fruits with a thicker skin have less of a problem with that. But even cherries, cherries can have a thick skin. Go ahead. Yeah.
I had a random question. So I know it says it's like sustainable and profitable, but I hear like a lot of people talk about regenerative farming. Would you say that kind of like this is like are they like pro drip irrigation if you're like a regenerative farmer?
I think so. I'm not an expert in regenerative farming, but is that kind of like no-till? I've heard things like that. Yeah, it would make sense. I mean, you can still use drip irrigation. You don't have to till for drip irrigation at all. I would think so. Yeah, yeah.
I just hear like mixed things, and I just want to hear what you would think, as someone that's like,
Oh, I think drip irrigation, it's used on an industrial scale. So huge farmers are using it. There's like, I think about strawberries, about 60,000 acres in California. Tomatoes, there's like 250,000 acres in California. Or almonds, man. Almonds, there's 1.3 million acres in California. And a lot of that's on drip. So it's large scale. But also, if you're doing a small operation, you're doing small organic or regenerative farming, it's just the most efficient way to use water. So there's really not too many downsides to it. Yeah. All right, let's move on. So again, with the fun picture, this just kind of goes through the whole system, from top to bottom. This is the flow of the water. So you have right here this whole system of drip irrigation, or really, you can put sprinklers. It's only drip because that's what we're putting on the end. But most of this it's true for any kind of farm. You're going to have your water source. So whether that's a well, a reservoir, or municipal water from a water project, pumping the water source, they usually go hand in hand. You'll have a well pump, or you'll have municipal water, and there'll just be static pressure in that you use. Or sometimes you have, like this one, they have a surface reservoir, and they'll have a booster pump so that they can get some pressure in there. Filters, again, super important. We're going to touch a little bit on filters today and the importance of filters to drip irrigation in general. One of the challenges with drip irrigation is that the emitters, the spaces are super small, so they can get clogged by things like sand. So you have to take into account filtration. That's a big deal.
Excuse me. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but on that picture right there, it's too small to see. Which one is a filter system?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we'll come in, we'll zoom in on this a little bit. These are sand filters right here. You can't really see. This is probably a screen filter right here, super small. But here's you can check this out. So you're going to see these filters all around the farm. This is a disc filter actually, but the sand filters you're going to have near your pump. And then the screen filters, or in this case, a disc filter, this will be kind of you maybe have a couple of these or one of these in the tunnels and close to the crops. So you just took it out. All right. So the water comes, and you got to make sure. I've even seen farmers that have been farming for a long time. They install these the wrong way, and you're like, why isn't it working? Why isn't the tunnel working? And we're doing all sorts of things. It's like, oh yeah, installed this wrong way. It has to be going the right way, or you're gonna give yourself headaches. So you got these little arrows right here. The water comes in, it gets forced so it comes in this way, goes all around this, goes through the filter, and then out that way. And so this takes out some of the smaller debris. And sand is a big one because, like I said, those are sand media filters, and it's exactly what you think it is. It's a big thing of sand that you're running the water through. And so that's kind of like the natural way that water is filtered when it rains or whatever, and the water percolates down to the aquifer. You can pass this around and check it out. It's the sand that filters it out. So we do that same thing with these big sand filters here. Water comes in the top, filters through sand, goes out the bottom, and it's a lot cleaner. But sometimes even the sand escapes, and that's why you have to have this secondary line of defense to get that out before it gets to the emitters. So it's the stuff we're going to talk about. I got down here. These are big California crops. Blueberries, maybe the smaller of the crops, but onions, we'd sell a lot of drip tape into onions. Like I said, strawberries is basically obligate drip, and it's all on drip. Blueberries, all on drip, for the same reason as strawberries, because you ruin the fruit with overhead watering. Almonds is a combination. Sometimes they used to use big sprinklers, they flood irrigation, they use micro sprinklers, but a lot of times they use drip because it does increase yields. And then you see the same kind of evolution has happened in tomatoes, a lot more drip. All right. I said no math. This one, I think this math was like a holdover from another presentation. We're going into some of this because this is some of the stuff that we'll do in the field. We'll do this math, but this is important. Like I said, the water source is super important. So when you get to the point that you're out there and you're looking at a farm and thinking like, this piece of land looks great, ask about the water, because if there's no water, you can't farm there. Or if there is water, but you're getting, only a few gallons a minute, you can farm there, but how much you can farm there is limited. So a lot of times at least in the area that I was farming in the Monterey Bay area, we had most of the wells that I had in the different sites that I was at, it's about 200, 300 gallons per minute. And you can have a decent sized block with that, but some wells are a lot bigger. So to measure the available flow, it's as simple as this. Anybody can do this with just a spigot. Take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it up for a minute, and then you measure how much water you have, and that's your flow per minute. What we're gonna do when we go down there is I got this little thing that I put together with this is a flow meter that I got off Amazon and all these different connectors. So we're just gonna plug straight into the drip line and see what the flow is, and then we'll set up the system, because that's important. What the flow is dictates what you can put downstream. You can't, if you have 10 gallons per minute, you can't put sprinklers or emitters or whatever you're putting down there that have, the sum of their flow rate is higher than actually what you have. It makes sense. Water pressure. So here I was told we don't have a water pressure gauge to do that, but it is as simple as just getting a water pressure gauge and plugging it in the same way. If you have it threaded to a spigot, you could thread it to that spigot and it's going to tell you what it is. Like I said, for drip tape, it's lower pressures. The drip line that we're going to use today is rated from 10 to 60. I heard that the PSI here is at 60, which seems really high. A lot of times you can use pressure regulators. We're not going to go into those today, but those are often used in conjunction with these filters and valves at the beginning of tunnels or in fields to ensure that there's not pressure fluctuations that would blow out your drip line or do other things like that. And then the last thing, this is important. If you're evaluating a space, you want to send water samples into a lab. You need to know what is in the water. So there's a lot of different reasons for that. Salinity is a huge issue, especially in the West. Salinity is important. Obviously, you can't irrigate with ocean water because there's too much salt. It gets into the soil, and what it does is there's an ion exchange in the roots, and it messes with that. So the roots can no longer, grab the nutrients that they need from the soil because there's an ion imbalance. So you can introduce the same thing by having too salty of water. Additionally, you need kind of space in the water to put in inputs. So, it's strawberries, for example. I had some farms with really good water and other farms with not so good water. So when you have really good water, you can do a lot of different things. And one of the things is you have space to put in, you have fertilizers, because fertilizers are a lot of times salts too. You're go in there with potassium nitrate or calcium nitrate, all sorts of different things. And all of that is going to raise the salt content or the EC, the conductivity of the water. So if for strawberries, really an EC of about 1.5, once you start getting over 1.5, you'll see damage on the leaves and all these other salt stress things that you want to avoid because it's going to negatively affect your yield. So, I had one place that was like 0.2. So if it was 0.2, I had 1.3 worth of space to put in fertilizers. I had another place that the baseline salinity was 1.3 already, so I had almost no space. It was very hard to fertilize. Another thing is, so within that is pH is a big deal. A lot of places around here will have, and people kind of know it as hard water. So there's a lot of bicarbonate in there. Bicarbonate is also going to complicate nutrient uptake for the roots. And you usually have to do some kind of acid treatment with that to get the pH down. depending on what type of plant you're growing. And then finally, to detect the presence of pathogens, because sometimes there's E. coli or other things in the water. And if you're growing and that gets on the, the plants or the fruit or whatever, you can, it could be a health issue. Any questions on this one? All right. So this is just taking us down to the next one. So, that's water and pump. We're down to filters. So we'll already kind of covered this a little bit. So why are we doing this? It's to prevent clogging, because if you don't work to prevent clogging, it's going to be a huge headache. That's the thing about early on in farming. Somebody told me this, and it's super true. Farming is a lifestyle. So you're signing up for something that's more than a job. You're signing up for something that if it's Easter Sunday and you get some alarm that your irrigation system broke and it's 100 degrees outside or whatever because you're in the Sacramento Valley. I'm speaking from a direct experience. You drive right down to a farm and you take care of it because you have to. So you want to do everything to make sure that your system functions, and filters are a huge part of that. You don't want things clogging. So again, there's the sand media filters, and these you're going to see these on larger farms. You've probably seen them if you're driving through the San Joaquin or Sacramento Valley or any big agriculture place. You look off the side of the road, you'll see stuff like this all the time. And it's a simple type of filter, through the top right here. You basically just have water coming in the top, the gravity pushes it down to the bottom, and then you have it coming out the bottom a lot cleaner. As it gets closer to the emission point or individual tunnels, in the case of this farm, or blocks, irrigation blocks, you'll probably put on one of these filters just to make sure that your emission devices don't get clogged. And, like we saw with the disc filter sample we have here, it gets pushed through the discs, and the grains of sand will get caught in the discs. Or the same thing with the screen, it'll stay on the inside of the screen and not be allowed to go outside of the screen, and will help you. So there's I have mesh requirements in here, and this is important when you get to selecting the actual product, because different products have different tolerances for grits or debris that's coming through the system. Really, the lower the rating, the higher the tolerance it has. It could take more stuff. So if you have something that's right here, a screen filter that's rated at 40 mesh, if you have something rated at 40 mesh, it could take a lot. Really, it's filtering out a lot. If it's 200 mesh, it's filtering out less. This is how many cross hatches it has in a square inch. So sand filters, depending on the grit of sand, they're about 120 to 200 mesh. Screen filters, 40 to 200 mesh, and disc filters go from 80 to 200 mesh. A lot of drip irrigation, you'll see we have drip tape that's rated at 80 mesh. 80 mesh is great. There's some emitters we have that are rated at 80 mesh. Really, 120 is kind of like the standard. And if you start going above 120, that would be an emission device that's a little bit more susceptible to clogging. Any questions on this one?
I do have a question.
Yes.
So definitely I won't be able to master all of this. Would the company contracting to do this when we have our farm set up?
Do we contract to set this up? No, but you can work with so we sell to distributors, and distributors are super helpful in setting all this stuff up. Like I said, when I got into it, I didn't understand this either, but it's funny because, the irrigation store that I went to, as a customer, is now a customer of Toro. So I'm on the other side working with the same guy, and he was super helpful. Like I bought a bunch of Toro stuff. We bought the big sand cyclone, which is a different type it's like a sand separator because we had a sandy well. And he helped set it up. So, you can do this and get a lot of help from the people that are selling. So we partner with the distributors, and the distributors provide the support. Our sales team provides support. And you'll definitely learn more as you go on with this. But yeah, main lines and sub-main pipes. This is maybe the boringest part. It's weird. That's why I got the pictures of the flower fields. Yeah, exactly. I took the picture. So this is the Carlsbad flower fields. You can go out there and you'll see our drip tape, with the oval hose. And we'll be using some of the oval hose today. So these are sub-mains. unsung heroes of the whole drip system. They're getting water. It's the vascular system. It's getting water, water from here to there. You can see right here on this, we're not going to use spaghetti, but you can use it. Actually, this is used frequently in strawberries. So right here, you have the oval hose, which we'll use, and just plug straight into it. You have the spaghetti tubing. So you plug this in, cut it, and you put it around the drip tape, and that's good enough. They'll also use the spaghetti sometimes to regulate, to kind of step down the pressure. That's a kind of older method there. But yeah, I mean, main lines are essentially larger size pipes, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, sometimes 6 inches. But when you start getting those bigger ones, it's usually PVC or lay flat, carrying water from here to there. Sub mains, you're going to have your laterals plugging into that. So we're going to set up a sub main today and plug in drip line. And yeah. And then it's usually made out of PVC. So if you have a main line or a sub main that's out of PVC, it's usually a permanent crop or something, either or an annual where you're going to plant in the same place year after year after year. The PVC is, if you use that, it's usually buried, and you'll have risers coming up that are just always there, so you can connect to your system. Lay flat is it's made out of PE. It's made out of polyethylene. No, polyethylene is the new stuff. It's made out of PVC, but it has a mesh to it, and it lays flat just like the name is. So it's just kind of like this. I don't have it on here. I should have put a picture of it on here. Anyway, there's that, and there's oval hose. So oval hose and lay flat, they weigh about the same. Oval hose is basically just big hose that's flattened that you use for these pipes. So one consideration when designing an irrigation system is the resistance of the water through the pipe. So we're not going too much into this, but you get charts. So you have a system that's set up and you have a certain flow that's going through the pipe. If you're doing the, like I was saying for the farm, 200 gallons a minute coming out of the well, you have to do something big, like an 8-inch pipe coming out of there, 6 or an 8-inch. You need something big. Otherwise, you get a lot of friction loss when you're going through the tube. So the smaller the tube is, the more friction loss you have. And we'll touch on that in a second when we're looking at lengths of runs. Any questions on sub mains or main lines?
Do you guys do anything with soaker hoses?
No, not really. I mean, that's the stuff that's kind of perforated all the way through. Yeah. Those aren't used so much. I mean, because we're focused on agriculture, at least this division is. We have even in the ResCom, we're not doing much with that. Yeah, I think it's more gardening. It's not really commercial grade. I don't even know much about them, but they're just kind of semi-permeable hose that you put out there and gets things wet. So I don't know how to do flow rate or anything. Okay, finally we're gonna get into it. When I was putting this together, I had the drip line first, but the kind of like order in my mind, it messed with it too much. I said I can't put it first because it's at the bottom of this water flow. I have to get to it last. So this is actually what we're here to talk about is drip. So drip tape, and man, I didn't bring a sample. I feel bad I didn't bring a sample of drip tape, but this stuff is great. This is what I used in strawberries. It's really unique because of the emitter, especially the emitter that we're selling. It's extruded as part of the hose itself. So all these hoses anywhere, basically you have this big machine that's melting plastic and it's pushing out hose and pushing out the shape of hose, and it goes through this long water thing and cools and gets oil at the end.
That'd be so cool to watch the process of this getting made. I just feel like that'd be really cool.
I can show you that.
So with drip line, with the stuff we're doing today, and we can pass these around, they have discrete emitters, and we're going to get into that so you can check it out. And these things, so the hose is extruded, and the emitters are called stung. They're stinging them in there at whatever separation you order. But with the drip tape, it's extruded at the same time. So there's a separate little wheel that it's extruding the line, extruding the tape, and you have this whole flow path that's in there. And so it's good for a lot of different reasons. Cost is a huge reason that it's super beneficial. but it's just, and then also resistance, because I was talking about resistance as far as the size of pipes go. When you have things inside the pipe, whether it's a fitting or a valve or these discrete emitters that are stung in there, it's going to slow down the water, but this flow path doesn't do it. So this was great. And when I was in strawberries, like we would just always buy Toro because of the quality of the tape. So yeah, drip tape, it's thinner, as the name implies. It's thinner. It goes down to even like 5 mil in wall thickness. And so it's usually for annual crops. So strawberries, you're putting in tape at the beginning of the year, you're taking it out at the end of the year. But it's less expensive because it's thinner. It's less expensive because of the extruded flow path. You have a lot of customizable spacings because it's extruded. So you can get the emitters as close together as 4 inches or as far apart as 24 inches. And then there's a ton of different flow rates. So let's see, there's 9 different flow rates. All these things, these are all the advantages of drip tape. It's not pressure compensating, but we do have flow control, which is near pressure compensating. And what that means is if you were just to take a hose, and I never appreciated this, I think, early on. If you're just to take a hose and poke a bunch of holes in it and then put water through it, it's just going to shoot out. That's laminar flow. It's just coming out as fast as the pressure. And so there's this direct relationship. What all these things do, these flow paths and these emitters that we have in here, it slows it down. It slows the water down. It makes sure that if there is debris that goes into the flow path, that is passed. And so it has different ways of doing that. But, then it also makes sure you're getting the precise amount of water that you're trying to put in a certain area. So yeah, it's pretty incredible how much goes into that part of drip. And really all the 3 that we talk about have some version of that. The drip tape, we're selling it. If you're buying a coil of drip tape, it's like 10,000 feet or 12,000 feet, or 13,000 feet. You're asking about smaller boxes. We have smaller boxes that I believe Tony's not here for. I need my lifeline. I think it's like 3,000 feet.
A calculation where it's like, if you have this many 4x6 row beds, like drip works. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but
yeah.
Well, that's good.
Well, at the end of this, we're going to go and kind of calculate that whole thing out. And it's just basically you're counting, you have the length of the lateral, how many laterals you need, and it ends up being, pretty simple multiplication.
Now, when you're saying that drip tape is a little bit thinner, would you say that in the long term for farmers, would they want to go with this route over the drip tape because it won't last as long as this? Or there's the benefit to the drip tape is?
Well, it depends on the crop. So
say flowers, for example, like if you're growing dahlias, sunflowers, zinnias, peonies, rose bushes.
So rose bushes might be drip line because you have those bushes year after year. But in the Carlsbad flower fields, the last, I had the picture out of that, that's drip tape there. Because year after year, they're turning the ground over. So, they pick their flowers and the year ends. I don't know exactly what they do there, but I imagine they'll go through and they'll disc everything, rip it and till it and, spread it out and get it all prepared, add fertility and then seed it. So if you're doing that year after year after year, you're going to want to have drip tape because it's cheaper. It's really reliable. It's a good product. But if you're installing an almond orchard and it's going to be in there for, 20 years or 30 years or however long almonds last, you want drip line. So that's the big thing. So right here, annual crops, that's why I have it underlined. It's really focused on that. A shorter useful life and less expensive. Great product. Yeah, I've never used anything different than Toro drip tape when I was one.
You reuse those drip tapes every year, yeah? If they're still in decent condition, it's good that you reuse them.
Well, you could reuse them. Yeah, there's no reason you need to throw them out. They get damaged over the course of use. So in my experience, like you'd have, I don't know, some kind of pressure surge, so it would blow out. You have to go there and repair it. That's another thing that's easy about this is it's easily repairable. You can really just cut this, a lot of times we would put a piece of spaghetti tubing or a little bit larger of a tube, like a hose that would fit in there, and you slide one end in and the other end in over it, and you use some baling wire to kind of just make a little bridge right there. So you can repair it, but it gets pretty beat up over the course of the season. Additionally, in strawberries, you were asking about the pests and everything. So that's definitely something you have to worry about with drip tape. So for some applications early on, I was putting it above the surface because we were trying to multiply the plants, and we didn't drill it into the ground. So normally in strawberries, it's about that far in the ground, and also under the plastic mulch, so it's protected. But if you have this on the surface, you need to worry about crows. Were a big thing. Crows would come down and they would get water out of it. But yeah, you can get exactly.
Squirrels have like chewed through.
Sure. So you have to watch out for that. I think, at least in my experience, it was good practice to bury it just a little bit, and then and that protects it from most things. But if you're going to use it year after year after year, that's why you get the hose, because it's thicker. And while some things can chew through that hose, it's a lot fewer. Definitely crows aren't doing it. Something that's really wants that water and is really trying. All right. Any questions on drip tape? No. All right. Drip line. Okay, this one's my product, man. So I love drip line. I'll pass it around. So these are the discrete. Let's see. This is the only one we have. No. These are discrete emitters. This is pretty good. So let's pass these around together. This is the difference between pressure compensating and non-pressure compensating. You see the one emitter with the cover is pressure compensating, and the other without the cover is non-pressure compensating. And so that's a key difference between like the benefits of drip line compared to drip tape. So drip tape's thinner, it's cheaper. With drip line, it's longer lived, but it's also pressure compensating. So that's good for a lot of different reasons. I had my favorite farm that I had when I was farming strawberries was a hillside farm. It was south facing with sandy ground. So you get the crop early. It was just beautiful. It reminds me, it's kind of like the area like this, but just south facing slope. So you get that the sun. But we were on a slope, so it was difficult. And, we were using drip tape. So one of the things I go into here is kind of dealing with slopes, and what works for drip tape also works with, drip line, but with the pressure compensating. So you're going, if you have a slope, you're picking up pressure as it goes along. And so sometimes it can be uneven, but with pressure compensation, to make sure that it's not, between basically 10 and 60 psi, if this is giving a quarter liter or giving 1 liter per hour, it's going to give 1 liter per hour. It's not going to go up or go down like tape does. So like I said, for permanent crops, sell a lot into orchards, a lot into vineyards. It's also used in the residential space. You'll see it all the time in parking strips and just other places where it's watering shrubs. Tape's really not used in residential. Pressure compensating, longer life, more expensive, and it comes in 1,000 foot or 400 meter, which is about 1,300 feet coils. All right. Any questions on drip line? We'll be playing with this later today. And the stuff that we have, actually, we're not going to use it, but it was just the coil that I saw that had been that I could use that had been sitting around the longest. It has clips on it. And those are kind of cool because sometimes in vineyards, I've seen this also in caneberries, they'll run a wire above and then clip the drip line. So the drip line actually drips down onto the ground and has some sort of velocity. I'm not exactly sure why they do it, but they do it. Maybe it's to keep them away from all the ground chewing things. And then so the last one is point source. I'm sure that everybody here is familiar with these already. I see them everywhere around the greenhouses. We got some of them right here, and we can plug these in later. These are point source emitters. You can open this up. Maybe I can open it up. Let's see. I don't know. Check it out. So these ones, they're sharp. You can put them, plug them right in there. These are ideal for greenhouse crops or anytime you're not growing on the ground or it's uneven, you know. So with drip line, drip tape, you kind of have to lay it out right next to the crop. But with this stuff, you know, you can use this spaghetti, plug it in, or like you saw outside, there's spiders and snakes and all that. It sounds, I never set them together, so it sounds so sinister, spiders and snakes. Yeah, you plug the spiders and snakes and all the other creepy crawlies in there, and then you plug that into your crop, so it makes it, you know, easier to deal with. Like in this case, it's tomatoes, and there's all sorts of different crops that you guys have down here. Pressure compensating and non-pressure compensating. So you can see right here, it's the diaphragm and how it interacts with the labyrinth that makes it pressure compensating. So that's the reason why it is pressure compensating. These are all PC ones that we have here. Used with hose. So you would just buy blank hose. All drip line is hose with emitter stung in it. You would get blank hose and plug these in. Good for irregular spacing. Some of the drawbacks is, you know, because they're on the outside of the drip line, it's less durable. You know, they're out there in the sun, UV degradation, they can get kicked and get broken. But if there's somewhere that's not going to happen, that's not an issue. And it's sometimes they're a little bit labor intensive because you have to put them in yourself. But I mean, that's, I guess, the price you're paying for it being customizable. And at the same time, you know, and I've seen this done in vineyards, you can plug this into drip line. So you can buy drip line that has emitters every 24 inches or 36 inches or whatever. And if you find some dry spot, you can take one of these and just plug it into the dry spot and add another emitter, you know, provided that you have the flow to support that. All right. Any questions on point source? All right. I think we're coming to the end. Let's see. All right. So this is just a couple notes on design. We're going to go through these last few slides and then take it out and just kind of do a lab and put everything that we learned to practice and put together a little drip grid. So this relates back to farm selection. So if you want to go all the way back to the beginning of this presentation when we're talking about water and you have to know how much water you have and what the quality is, you also need to know about your soil, you know, because the soil is super important. What kind of nutrients you have in your soil. So just like the water, you're going to want to get soil samples and send it into the lab. Really the kind of this is a simplified version of sand, loam, and clay. And it's almost like that's almost a linear look at it as really light ground, kind of mixed ground, and heavy ground. It's more complicated because it's really clay, sand, and silt, which is organic matter. You know, all in an interplay, determining what kind of ground you have. And so for different crops, different types of ground are better. For strawberries, it was sand. You always wanted sand. I can't think of too many crops where good drainage is a bad thing. You kind of always want good drainage, at least in my experience. So I tend to prefer sandy soils, and clay soils are a little bit hard. You know, often clay soils are often kind of basic too, so they'll have a high pH, and it makes it difficult for the ion exchange. If you want to know the soil type, so you send that into the lab, find it out, and it determines the type of flow rate that you're going to choose on the product. Sand, having good drainage, you can have these higher flow rates because you're not going to flood an area because it's absorbing on like 1 inch per hour or something fast. Clay, on the other hand, drains poorly, sometimes not nearly at all, and it'll just puddle there, which is usually you don't want that. So know that when you're selecting the flow rates, that's a big deal. The crop requirements is huge. You want to know so how fast can your soil drain? How much water does your crop need? So sometimes if it's it depends. Sometimes if it needs more water, you get a higher flow rate. Strawberries can have a high water requirement, but we would use low flow rates and use cycle and soak. It all depends on what you end up, what kind of scheme you're irrigating with. Yeah. This is case by case. It's a lot of different things. So we're getting into the complicated now. It's becoming a triangle in 3-dimensional. I'm trying to describe it, but we'll see. And then also the optimal crop spacing. So this comes into your product selection. Again, you want, if you're gonna have really, in strawberries not so much, because you're spacing them 12 to 18. It doesn't mean you're spacing your emitters in that case at 12 to 18, because you're kind of trying to wet everything, and that's how it usually is with annuals. But with perennial crops, with permanent crops like an orchard, if you have a tree every 72 inches, you want to have your emitters at every 72 inches. Yes.
So, can you explain what is a higher flow mean, medium flow mean, and low flow mean? I know that we based on the brain, but then also based on what is a high flow. But the gravity or.
Oh, okay. So I'm referencing the drip products that you would use with this type of soil. So sand, because it drains well, is suited for products with higher flows. So in the case of drip line, a high flow would be like 1 gallon per hour, and a low flow would be a 1/4 gallon per hour. So if you were on, depending on all the other factors, if you were on sand, you could use 1 gallon per hour with more confidence than you would if you were on clay. That being said, when it comes to drip line, about half the drip line we sell is a 1/2 gallon per hour. So if you want to be safe, you're worried about it being too much or too little, 1/2 gallon per hour seems pretty safe. Spacing. Yeah, so all these things you have to assess at the beginning of getting a farm. They also come into play when you're selecting the product. Any other questions? All right. So the slopes get complicated sometimes. I don't think we have to get too. I think this slide's maybe like too in depth. But one thing to keep in mind: if your slope is going this way, your drip lines are going this way. You don't run your drip lines along with the slope. So that's the first rule, and it has a lot to do. If it's tape, well, man, you're going to get a lot more pressure on the lower side, and the higher sides you're going to have uneven. This just helps with that. Sometimes if you're really getting into design, you can have a certain spacing, and then increase the spacing towards the bottom, because you always have to account for the movement of the water once it's in the soil. You have this picture right here of trees and placement of drip line on a tree on a slope. And if I drive the 15 a lot. And these avocado orchards you see, they're on almost like a cliff. And I think about how are they even harvesting it, but they're having to think about this like crazy. They're having to think about how they design it. And guaranteed, the water source has to be on the high side, because you see right here. On the high side, the water is flowing down the hill within the soil, and it's going right into the root zone. You put it on the low side, half of the root zone is dry. So that's something to keep in mind. It's also to keep in mind on slopes. It's important is the amount of water that's still in the tubing. It's going to drain out afterwards. And so it's going to go to whatever block size you design. A lot of it's going to go to the bottom of that. So that's where this extra spacing comes in, and those type of considerations. You can make them, usually how you deal with this is you'll make them smaller blocks. You wouldn't want to, on a hillside, keep doing like that, but you want to make it a bunch of smaller blocks. So when you have that post-set drainage, it's not too much. It's about, just with the drip line in general, per 50 feet, it's about 1 gallon of water. So in addition to what the nominal flow rate is, you're going to get that coming out of the system. Any questions on this one?
I have a random question now, because we're seeing it in the greenhouses all the time. So is most of the situations like the one with the cliff, is that just runoff, they'll just let the water go and it'll eventually trickle down there, but there's nothing to catch it and bring it back to some reservoir because that would be a lot of like how it get back up here.
Yeah, they have the circular hydroponic system here. Is really cool. Is that what you're talking about? Because you have the water drain down and then you're pumping it back.
And you just come back up like in those cases because sometimes it not it gets way back.
Yeah, I think this farm is an exception. You know, you're going to go to most farms and it's not going to be hydroponics. The water that gets collected is going to percolate down into the aquifer. It's going to run off. Yeah, exactly. Which is another reason it's so important to be targeted with the irrigation and use drip irrigation, because you're putting it out there and it's not going to catch you next time. It's not that kind of deal.
You said some places will require you to like build a pond.
Catchment, yeah, for sure. The one farm I was talking about, we had 3 different catchment ponds, and that was a huge deal to catch the water and make sure it didn't spill out. If you run off into the roadway and you block the roadway, you can get, I think the fines are like $50,000 or $100,000. It was a huge deal, and that was another one of those things, like your irrigation system breaking on Easter. If it was raining, I was just praying I wasn't washing out into the into the street, man. Well, actually, my farm flooded in 23. Like early that year, the Pajaro River levee broke, and it was crazy. It was on. I don't know if I have pictures on my phone, but it was under about 4 feet of water. It was nuts, man. The strawberries survived though. Like we made it through that. Yeah, we got lucky. Some people got washed out because it didn't wash it out when it came in. But when it came out, like when it drew back, there's some fields that just got ripped apart, but ours didn't get ripped apart. It was a little bit later, but we were able to save the season. That was crazy. But yeah, that's farming. It's a lifestyle. It's floods. It's on weekends and all that stuff. Yeah, exactly. You have to pay a price for this view. This view's not free. This is the last thing. So I think I'm getting. This is the last one. And it's getting like, I looked at this graph for a long time. I had no idea what it meant. Yeah. But now I think I do. So what I think I know, I'm going to present to you. No. So this is what I'm. Check it out. When water goes down a pipe, it has that resistance, like we were talking about earlier. And also, if you have more emitters on there, it's gonna lose steam. So that's what this head loss is, this PSI. So if you're at the submains and you have, we're assuming like 30 PSI. Say you're 30 PSI at the submains, and you have these different products right here. So this is the product, and I chose this one because this is actually the product we're going to use. We're going to use the internal diameter of the hose is 0.62 inches. And the flow rate is 0.26 gallons per hour or 1 liter per hour. And the spacing that we have, I believe we have 15 inches spacing. So we have here 12 and 18. So we're somewhere in between that. But if look at this graph now. So if you have 30 PSI and 12-inch spacing, what is the maximum run length? What length are you just going to have no pressure at all anymore? Can you tell me? It's on your thing too. So it's the first one. The very first one.
Question one more time.
At what point? This is why I said it took me. I looked at this. I don't blame anybody here because I looked at this for maybe a year before I understood it. If you had the product, so we're looking at the blue line here. When does it totally just, if you start with 30, when you have nothing? Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, that's it. So this is loss here. That's why it's backward. It was like backwards in my mind. So so 100 feet, you're good. At 200 feet, you're pretty good. At 300 feet, you're starting to lose. Like at 300 feet, you're losing a little bit. At 400 feet, just below 4, then you're losing 5 PSI. That starts to become significant. If you're talking drip line with it, we are talking drip line, and you're at 30, it only functions the minimum at 10. So really, you have zero pressure there, but at 10, it crosses 700 at 10, and then at 800, it has nothing. So you're dead at 700, and 800, there's just nothing at all. So these are some other considerations that you're making. And like I said, I came in to kind of designing this class, and I wanted it to be conceptual. I reflect back on to like, being in school. I took a conceptual physics class, and that was basically physics without any math. And it was super fun, man. It was super fun. I love that class. And then I had to take physics where it had calculus, and it was less fun. But like, I was better at physics because I had that conceptual physics class first, and I was able to wrap my mind around it without having all these numbers and variables and things that make it seem hard. Because in the end, irrigation, I don't think is particularly hard, but you have to understand it. And there are certain things. So beyond this, you'll learn about head loss and KD and all these different stuff. But you have enough now to design a system. And so that's what we're going to do next. This is basically, we learned about all these things. The only things we haven't done is we haven't mapped the area, located the point of connection, calculated the total feet required, or measured the zone flow. But we're going to go all and do that out now there in the lab, and we can fill this out. And then basically, when it comes time for you guys to set up a drip irrigation system, you'll know how to do it. So that's it. It's lab time. All right. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. All right. Sure.
So you never had zero slope.
Oh, we're out of slope right now.
So with your slope, when there is slope present, you larger those or the space you play with the space?
This is slope right here. We're not really covering slope here. We're talking about water pressure within the tube. So you have the certain water pressure, and the slope does influence water pressure. If you're going down slope, it increases the water pressure. But this is assuming flat. And you're right, you're never totally flat, but you a lot of times you're kind of functionally flat. You're close enough to it that you can just consider it flat. Does that answer your question? All right, awesome.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
So the products that we were talking today for the company providing product with Toro,
Yeah.
and for the drip system here, will that work for any weather limits zone in US? Like in Kansas and here is okay, but that work for Florida?
Florida for sure. I want to sell more things in the Florida. No, we sell into Florida. We have a plant in Florida too. So it's not just the El Cajon production plant. We have a plant in El Paso and also one in Sanford, Florida. We sell a lot in Florida, yeah.
If you have someone who's like up in Maine or like Maine Flint areas, is there, if you have drip, is there a way that you guys can warm up the water for them to stuff
Oh, I don't know about that.
crazy temperatures? Sometimes you can't even breathe. It's no, but see, there's the types of people dying. Can you like get into stuff? Now you get you.
I think that like the energy would. I haven't heard about that. I think
I know
that's kind of like, so you go back to Minnesota and like University of Minnesota and Toro. I feel like that's the one thing that the cold places have on the warm places is they just have a period of time of the year. It's like, I can't do it. It's too cold. I'm staying inside and I'm chilling, whereas here it's just all year long, man. It never stops.
Do they have a greenhouse in Greenland at the Mains? Do they have a greenhouse up there?
In Greenland?
Yeah.
Hi, fun fact, Dutch Bucket, ask them homework. Dutch Bucket comes from the Netherlands. They're known for like their horticulture and greenhouse.
That's 100% right. Yeah, the Dutch or the masters of greenhouse. It's true. Yeah, 100%.
Hey, those are salads. I'm for you.
All right. All right. So yeah, I guess let's take a break and we can go down there and put it together. If you want to move the nut out, moving the nut out tightens it against the hose. You can operationalize it. You guys can just, maybe take turns putting in the fittings, and then we'll do the stretch out all the on every line. Yeah.
Oh, every line?
Exactly. So it puts them a foot apart. And do it right on the crease. So you want to aim for the crease. Yeah. We have about 10 emitters per line. And then we have 6 lines. Each emitter is a quarter gallon. How many gallons per hour? A quarter gallon per hour. How many gallons per hour we need? So there's 60 emitters. There's 60 emitters at a quarter gallon per hour. Yeah, there's 15, right? Yep, 15. All right, let's see if we have that. Are they based off pressure? So they're pressure compensating emitters. Anywhere in between 10 psi and 60 psi. They're going to give you the same flow rate. Make sure the valve's open, because if the valve's closed, it's not going through. All right, let's see. I'm going to shoot water out your way, so watch out. Right here, I have a flow meter. And so I'm going to see actually how much water is coming through at the source. You can do this also by, collecting water in a bucket. So it maxed it out. So 7, 14, 22, 37. It has over 40. Over 40 liters per minute. Yeah.
Too much, no? Too much.
So what's that? That's pretty light. Yeah, 10 gallons per minute. Yeah. So we needed 15 gallons per hour.